Hi there. Welcome to what is code reusability and how to maximize in game development. I would like to briefly tell about me first. I am Koray Sözeri. I am developing games for almost 3 years and I am Unity game developer at POW Games. I am also a musician and I've been playing at concerts with a variety of bands for years. I graduated from German as foreign language, but as I have passion for making games, I switched to software development after my study. POW Games is a mobile game studio from Turkey that recently sold its self-developed titles Food Match 3D and Tile Match Home Design Puzzle to UK-based Matchingham Games. Our first game, Food Match 3D, has reached more than 2 million users on iOS and Android platforms. Code reusability is implementing pre-written code in new applications, instead of writing from scratch to save time and energy. A code partition should be clean, readable, and easily adaptable to make reusability possible. First of all, it should solve a problem. If it does not meet a necessity or contribute to time efficiency, it will be a waste of developers' time. It should have only one responsibility to handle. You don't expect from a calculator to play music. If it would play music, and later you want to implement playing music to another device like radio, you will have to extract the code for playing music manually, which will take a long time because it's tightly coupled to a calculator. But instead, if you make a device that only plays music, you could easily adapt it to any device you want. It should be scalable. It is hard to foresee all requirements of a feature. Sometimes you will have to add small changes or improvements during or post-project development. It should be eligible to scale and expand to supply optional needs. It should use a well-planned architecture that is easily understandable and extendable by other developers. Even if you develop a project alone, it will be hard to remember how exactly your code works after a month. And you will likely to be like any other developer that reads your code. And if you are working with a team, you don't help only your teammates by providing a readable code, but also save your time from explain everything about it and make possible others to develop it further. What is the goal? Game development is a long process that requires developers to make a lot of mechanics and systems work together. It has core mechanics, user interface, input systems, IAP integration, analytics, and much more. Creating these systems specialized for a game costs much more time and energy by causing a repetitive process for each game. But instead, creating independent modules that self-operate is like switching buttons on and off and provides reuse on any project. When developing a game, almost any feature is possible to develop, but it is a matter of time. Using that time efficient becomes more and more important as the project grows. To achieve quality that creates new experiences, developers need time. Using the time that gained from making systems modular, developer could be able to increase quality on products. It is also important for developer to manage his energy on right focuses. When interrupted by external factors, developer loses focus on his current task and caused to spend more time to finish the job. Solving a bug or adding a feature on an unrelated module will take more energy. Planning and ordering the tasks also gain importance when using energy efficiently. It is very essential to keep asset management of a project modular and dynamic. Modules should be easily expandable and customizable regarding requirements. Features should contain only core contents. When developing a game, things could easily get complex. Because a game actually doesn't consist only core mechanic. For a player, it's easy to overlook many aspects of a game, since player will be focused only on the task that he has been given. But actually, there are many processes running on the background through players' actions by utilizing algorithms. Therefore, to overcome challenges that this complexity created, I keep things simple and separated as much as possible. When learning to play a musical piece, if you try to learn whole piece at once, you will be overburdened to memorize and manage to play the notes respectively. But instead of doing that, if you will divide the piece into sections and study these little fragments, it will be very easy to bring together one after another. Then you will play the whole piece at once, and the audience will be amazed and think you did an incredible job. In our case, the audience is the players that playing our game, and players see the game as a whole. But it is actually a very complex system that formed by bringing many features together. It has events that triggered by course of an action or timers, reward and resource management systems, a way of handling players' inputs to translate into data that game can manage, and way more. To handle these systems to work together, we should develop them one by one, divided into their core functions, like learning to play a musical piece. A module in Basis actually a service that solves a problem that we encounter during the development phase. Think like it's a small factory. It has data as raw materials, parameters, and configurations for how to handle this data, and controller classes to operate and organize the process. And as output, it serves a processed data as product. This little factory saves huge amount of time on development process by switching modules, instead of building a new factory for every project that requires this processed data. And it is not only about saving time, but also keeps developer focused on the project needs only. During work, even if we can multitask, we have a distraction limit, and if we push that limit, eventually we get burnouts. To avoid that, I focus only one task at a time. I would not like to add a feature for an input mechanism when I am developing a core mechanic. Even if it's a simple feature and takes only half an hour, it interrupts me from my current focus, and could cause to overlook some cases, as I will be adding a small feature only, instead of seeing as a whole system. Sometimes hard-coding small code snippets look faster in short time. But these 10-minute solutions solve a problem only for a short time. As a project grows, designers require a variety of solutions. They want to show time, numbers, and text in different formats. They want UI to behave different on specific scenarios. They want specialized sequences that runs on different orders dynamically. Making variations of these hard-coded functions just adds more complexity and makes project harder to manage. Every new feature will be not a single unit of code. It becomes multiply of total number of features if modules didn't properly separated. If you create modules specified for a game, you will end up creating small variations of these for every game. Let's take resource management for example. If you are developing a casual game, you would have to develop most probably an economy system. When you develop series of actions of game in order, you will have developed a core mechanic first, then sequences between levels maybe. Then you would have to decide how you will handle giving rewards to player at the end of a level, where you will keep the reward information, how you will save and load it, which format will you choose like binary, JSON, which hash algorithm will you use to encrypt data, and so on. But if you create modules for common use instead, you will making a whole game by adding just core mechanic only. You will be then just be calling a function like addCoin and all reward handling situation is solved. Then you could use the time you gained to improve or expand your core mechanic or make a cleaner code and more sustainable project. It is like learning a musical instrument. If you want to play a musical piece with an instrument but don't know how to play that instrument, you will be learning all its techniques same time and probably not be able to play perfect. Scales that used on that piece, chords and their placements on the instrument. You would have to learn all of it from nothing. Yet it is much easier to learn the scales if you study only scales in a range of time. If you use the same amount of time for learning the techniques and theoretical knowledge for that instrument instead of learning the piece, you will play not only that piece, but also any piece you would like to learn. But how do we know what we will need through a project? At this point, it is very important to research, study, and investigate the requirements that may come in our way. First, what you should be doing is to determine the characteristics of features. It is rather important to develop healthy relations between development and design team, and organize plenty of meetings and specify all the details before the development phase began. How will the core mechanic work? What will be the win and lose conditions? Which power-ups will be there? And how they will be integrated to the gameplay? Which live events will be used? Will internet connection be required? Every information and detail is important to know before you initialize the development phase. You don't want to build from scratch after getting a new information about a feature. After all information about feature is gathered, it is time to build the modules flexible and work through different scenarios. Because features you will implement will also be used on other games, but with minor or major changes. It saves time and energy a module to adapt to different situations. It is also important to keep a module to have a single responsibility. A time management system should not have anything related to adding rewards to players' inventory when a timer finishes. Even simple functions like formatting time and getting random values should be separated from the module. Because you will probably need that code also in another module, and you will either have to write or copy same code or make redundant dependency, which is also should be avoided. Either way, it is just a waste of space and energy. Binding modules should be handled in the project regarding requirements. In the end, game itself is a module that stands inner side of the dependency spiral. It is constituted by modules with a manager that organizes when to use what, with its configuration and setups. In the long run, purpose of creating modules is to gain time and efficiency. It is also important not to go off objective and build more than what is needed. The questions when before starting to build a module are, how much time will it going to save, and how long does it take to create? Planning the whole process of developing the module and optimizing the time by adding or removing optional features also a must before start. It is also better to ensure that module actually solves a problem. If you continue with or without it, and not going to save you a considerable amount of time, then you don't need it. As a project grows, it becomes more and more important to keep things tidy and easily reachable. A module might have, besides scripts, assets like images, materials, meshes, and prefabs. these assets be founded in their separate folder, encapsulated into subfolders just like namespaces. Keeping assets in their related directory not only keeps project tidy, but also helps when automating tasks with pipelines and cast files into collections to do generalized work. File structure in a project should be followed like a pattern too, especially in projects where multiple developers and/or designers work. Everyone should be aware of that pattern so they could easily find the files generated by each other. To improve maintainability and dependency management, scripts on modules should be also separated into layers. Let's assume we use MVC as architectural pattern. In a possible scenario, a module would have a dataset that contained in model, render and layout info integrated to user interface in view, and general logic that handle management in controller layers. This way, a module operates self without exposing its local members and creating unnecessary dependencies. Another way of keeping things separated and reduce dependencies is creating an indirect communication between modules through events, instead of giving direct references, which could cause a curl of dependencies that spread it across the whole project. Let's summarize general properties and implementation code of code reusability. A module must solve a problem. It should have a single responsibility and not consist any unrelated code. It should reduce development time by using across different projects instead of rewriting. It should be flexible and serve on also different circumstances. It should have minimum dependency and do the most of its work on the inner mechanism. I hope this talk helps you to optimize your development processes. Feel free to ask me any question about the presentation on my email address. Thank you so much for listening to my talk.